Welcome, guys, to the Ian Neil live study group. This is a Saturday night study group that meets at 8 p.m. in UK time. And today I've got Jeffrey, who's nearly ready to get ready for his tests. And he's asked for some tips on preparing for the test and also how to deal with awkward questions. Well, my philosophy for 701 is 25% more information than 601. 601, I could have studied in 5 different areas and passed the test. In 701, the examiner spreads it wider. You need to know every single thing. So I wrote a study book that follows the exam objectives. My chapter 1 is objective 1.1. My chapter 2 is objective 1.2, all up to my chapter 28, which is objective 5.6. Now, one of the things we need to look at, I look at preparing for tests a lot different from any other trainer. So I'm going to go onto a whiteboard and I'm going to show you a scenario that everybody should be familiar with. And what happens here, I'll go in to take a test. I'll go in and I'll go test. I take test day, and what happens is I come off test day and I'll go in and I score a 70%. So I've done pretty well on the first time round of a test. The second thing I'm going to look at, I know I've got 30% of these questions wrong, and human nature now says to me, I'm actually going to focus on this 30% of the test. Is that correct, Jeffrey? But what you've got to realize, what happens if I actually guess on 50% of these questions? On test day, I might get the questions related to these, but my guesses, I might only guess half as well as I've done before. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit a 65%, and I'm now going to fail my test. And that's not good for anybody. So I want us to have a different outlook when we're going to take a test bank. And what I've got now is I've got a bronze, I've got a silver, and I've got a gold strategy. So my strategy for the bronze is that I actually take a test. So whether it's good or whether it's bad, I take a test, and what I do, I get a score. My silver is I go through the question bank, and with my silver, I go through the question bank and I read the right and wrong answers. And I've done this in my book. And sometimes when you're reading the solution, you're actually learning from the answers that are in the test. But for me, the gold is once I've reviewed those questions, I will go in and I'll retest. But this time, I'm going to be doing something different when I retest. When I take a question, I'm going to highlight the word, because remember, I've seen the solution. I'm going to highlight the words inside the question that make it the answer. Because you can put a couple of words in a question and change the whole attitude to the question. But also what I do, I have test A and I have test B. And what I do, I review this one. I take a break to give my brain a rest. And then what I do, I review the second one. Then I go back. I then rescore test A. And I take a break and rescore test B. And it's very important that we only spend a maximum of probably 35 to 40 minutes, unless the test is a large test. So what I need to also do is show you things that we want to get ready for the test. So I prepare for the test. I read the book. I do the review questions. I take some mock exams. And with my book, you got mock exam online, 1, 2, and 3. And those are free, and I think they're 85 questions. But what I'm going to do over Christmas, over Christmas, when I've got some free time, I'm actually going to write mock 4. Now, part of the questions we get the PBX questions. And a lot of people say to us, how do we deal with the PBQ? It's PBQ. How do I deal with PBQ? Well, it's illegal for anybody to post the exam questions or the PBQs online. But they have PBQs on attacks, PBQs on wireless, and PBQs on other things. These are mainly drag and drop, or these are drop down. And success in a PBQ is based on your knowledge. Because all CompTIA is actually doing for the PBQ is testing how much knowledge you've got in different areas. And if you just apply your knowledge to those PBQs, we could be very successful. But I've got a website, securityplus.training, and let me show you in this website some of the practice resources you've got. Now, my book comes with 3 online mock exams. It's got some flashcards, but what we're going to do now, we're going to come out of here and I'm going to go to securityplus.training. Now, I'm going to put this URL into the drop-down box for some of the guys that are live at the moment. So you can find this website quite easily. Now, a couple of things we've got on the website. We've actually got exam tips, exam preparation, and it gives you what you need to do on exam day, things you need to do, but also what I've said, look at Professor Mercer's video course, but I've got some YouTube videos in here that are quite well worth watching. Now, with my study guide, I've got a glossary, and the glossary is good for people that are struggling with acronyms. So what is AAA? We know it's authentication, authorization, and accounting. However, it's centralized authentication that records those that log in for billing and purposes. And we can go down those, and there's quite a few of those. I've got flashcards because what I say is when you're doing my chapter 18, and that's the one with the ports, don't look for port numbers. Look for the protocols to see what the protocols do. For instance, you might realize that Telnet is a remote administration protocol, but the password's in clear text, and anyone with Wireshark can steal it. So then what would you do with that? I would then bring in SSH, but I would focus on the chapter 18, my book, learning what the protocols do. But 2 days before my exam, I would come in here and I would go into ports test. Which port does SSH use? I think I'm going to have a guess at 22. Then you go to the next one. Which port does NTP use? Jeffrey, do you know?
Is it 123?
It's a 123. And there's 30 ports in there that are quite good. So I've got some flashcards that work as well. But the ports quiz is quite good because chapter 18, I want to know what the protocol does, because this is called Security Plus. So they're going to give you an unsecure protocol and ask you to secure it. I've also got acronyms, ports quizzes. So here's the acronyms. What is OAuth? Oh, it's Open Authentication. What's OCSP? It's Online Status Protocol. But if you go back to glossary, it'll tell you what it's done. Now, I don't know if you've seen these, but these are to prepare you for PBQs. I've done certificates attacks and wireless because these are 3 common areas that will be tested. So if I go to certificates, for instance, and it says to me, oh, higher level of trust, I grab the pink one, stick it in the gap, and oh dear, I've guessed wrong. So then what I'm going to look for, public key format. So what is the format of a public key? Oh, I'm going to try P7B. So if I get that right, I've got that. What's the private key extension? I'm going to put in PFX. And you'll notice that the pink column is starting to disappear. How's that? So if you do those, and you can do all of those, it increases your knowledge base, because PBQs are just, you've got a drop down. What does this do? So it might say, what sort of attack is lack availability, and you're looking for DDoS or DOS, that type of thing. Now, let's come back to my question technique for tonight. And let's see what you guys are doing, right or wrong. Exam question technique. Now, with the exam questions, sometimes you get mainly 4 answers, but sometimes you get 6, sometimes you get 9. So what do I need to do? I need to read the question carefully and all of the answers. It's hard to choose one from 4. Like if you go to France and you've got the guy on the beach and he's got a little table and he's got 4 leather cups and he's got a white ball in there, and he puts a white ball in and he shuffles it round. It says, put 10 euros in the cup, and if it is there, I'll pay you 10 euros. Well, you shouldn't do that anyway, because that's a 3-to-1 bet and he wants it balanced in his favor. In a 701 question, in the actual test, you could read that whole question and all the answers 3 times inside the minute you've got. What I also do, I rule out all of the wrong answers. So if I get it down to 50-50, I don't just go, stab, I'll go that one. If I get it down to 50-50, I reread the question carefully and I look at the finer detail and I make one 60-40. One person asked me before, which one do I pick? I says the 40 if you want to fail. If you got a large question, I had a guy who was Greek and his name was John. And in 501, we get some really large questions. And he said to me, I translate it, but by the time I get to the end of the question, I forgot what the question's asking. So if you get a large question, go to the paragraph. Is it a statement? Is it a statement? Is it a question? And when you do that, you say to yourself, the statements are going to help me answer the question, but the question is the points. And if I get a huge output, I see if an answer matches. CompTIA's outputs are quite bad sometimes. And the best way to deal with an output, you could sit and stare at an output for 3 minutes. You've only got a minute a question and probably 10 minutes spare. Look at the answers and see if it matches it. If one of the answers is SQL injection, look up to see, do a C select star, do a C 1 equals 1. Or if it says directory transversal, I look in that question, do I see the word etc.? Now, what we're going to do next is look at the don'ts. Now, Jeffrey, do you think you overthink questions?
Yes.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
We try not to overthink the question. The problem with Security Plus, one question could be quite technical and the next question very easy. And we tend to look at the very easy questions and think, oh dear, there must be more to it, there must be a trick. Now, if you're an English speaker, we don't want you to scan, we don't want you to rush, because when you scan and rush, you're not asking answer, you're not reading the question carefully. Now, double guess and second guess This is the one that should be a criminal offence. Now, watch my hands. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it right? Is it wrong? And if you're a politician, you don't know if it's right, you don't know if it's wrong. So what I need to do when I'm double guessing, second guessing, is stop it. If I take a question, I go, that's right, and it's actually right, you know it's right. If I go, that's right, and it's wrong, you know the next time that question is actually wrong, because you need to be your best prepared for this test. So you need to know exactly what's right, exactly what's wrong. Now, I used to work for Firebrand, and we used to do boot camps. And I used to get people on a Sunday night, and we used to work 18-hour days. And we used to have them through 2 A+ exams and a Network Plus exam by the Saturday afternoon. And the people that are struggling or fail are the people that change their answers. Now, when you've done your studying, somewhere along the line, you're going to think to yourself, I'm sure that's the answer, but I do not know why. Back yourself. The other thing you need to do is don't read all the questions if you have time. The school teacher says, read the question if you've got time. Don't bother doing that, because you've got Doubting Thomas banging the brain. Are you right? Are you wrong? Are you right? Are you wrong? You want to get into reading the question carefully. No scanning, no rushing, no double guessing, no changing answers. How's that? Now, when I get to the test day, there's a couple of minor things I'm going to do. Number one, I'm going to take the email from Pearson that has my booking. Now, this is for online. So this will be online students. I'm going to email it to myself so that on test day, it's in the first 10 emails I've got, and I'm not going to get a problem. I need to go to Google and get CompTIA online customer support. I'm going to go to my phone and I'm going to add it as a contact. So I'll put in my phone, Pearson support, and I'll put the telephone number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, one thing we've got to realize is next, you're going to have to book in for the test. Now, if I'm at a test center, I want to arrive 30 minutes prior. Probably sit in my car, then go to the desk at 15 minutes. Because when you're traveling, you don't want to get stuck in traffic or anything. Now, remember, if I'm online, I need a passport. I'm writing password for some reason. It must be ingrained in my brain. So I want a passport. I want a driving license. And they must both be valid. I had one girl from Texas who went to take the exam online, and the proctor would not accept her passport. Her driving license, sorry. And the driving license had expired. And she said, well, in Texas, they allow you to use an expired driving license. I think that's because of COVID. But I said, they're not Pearson. I need one form for online. For testing, I need 2 forms of ID for a test center. Now, let us go in and have another look at what I'm going to do when I'm in the test. Once I've started the test, I'll look at my top left-hand corner and I've got 90 minutes. Underneath it, I've got a thing, flag for review. As I go through the test, what I'm going to do is you're going to get the simulations. The simulations are the PBQs, 1, 2, and 3. And there are a few around. And if you're struggling with one of them, you're going to flag it. When you get through the test, if I can answer the questions, it's like diving into water and I'm getting points. But if I've got an awkward question and I start to do it, it's like going in the water and ending up with the diver's belt and the concrete boots. If you cannot answer a question very quickly, or you need some more time to think for it, flag it up. Now, let's say I got to question 10. And what happens is it says 0 of 78. Maybe say I've got 78 questions. If I flag it up, it's got a blue box. And if I don't answer it, it's got red writing and it says 1 of 78. But if I get to question 22 and I flag for review and I've answered it, this 1 of 78 doesn't change. But there's still a blue box. You cannot leave the exam until you say, do you want to leave the exam? Yes. Do you want to leave the exam? Yes. You must say yes twice. Let's say 78 is my last question. It's going to automatically put me on the review screen. When I'm in the review screen, I go top to bottom and I count the blue boxes. And today, I've counted 20 questions out of 78. 25% of the questions I've not answered. And the reason you've not answered them, you want to give yourself time. Because I've had some students that are quite good and they've got caught early in the exam with a question and they spent 8 to 10 minutes answering that one question. We need to optimize the time. But what you've got to realize, you can probably get 13 wrong. So if I've got 20 questions on my review stream and I can turn that into a 10, I know I've got a pass. Now, when you're in your practice tests before I get ready, what people say, oh, I've done the test. I've done it in 20 minutes and I've scored 70%. You might have had 60 minutes to do that test. You need to change your mindset. We need to actually concentrate much higher on what we're doing. I need to take every question as if it is I'm going to take it as if it is my last question. And this last question is going to be my pass or fail for the whole test. We need to get a higher level of concentration, and we need to adopt the question technique that I tell you. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to go on to the mock exam that I've got online. These are free mock exams. And what we'll do 5 or 6 of these questions. How does that sound, Jeffrey?
Sounds great.
Let's go in and see what we've got, and let's go in and see what we should be doing. So, I've got my book here. Let me just put this in. I've got the link from the book. I thought I must have closed it. Here it is. Right. So I'll go to my dashboard. Initially, you put the link for the book in, and what you actually get with the link in the book, you'll get into this here, mock exams, exam tips. So there's a few little exam tips inside here. And we want to see all the exam tips. Jeffrey, did you get that to work for you before?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Hardware, new device, change the default settings. Legacy driver, lack of vendor support. These are things that we should be looking at, and that's my exam tips inside here. So let's go and pick a mock exam. So we're going to do 5 questions off our mock exam because we're up to an hour. Jeffrey, do you want set 1, 2, or 3?
Set 1.
There we go. We've got set 1. It's 75 questions. We're going to start. So we need to read it carefully because we need to know what they're asking. A contractor has been hired by a hospital to sanitize data held in an archive. Now, What does sanitize mean? It means we're going to get rid of it. However, the contractor states he cannot sanitize 20% of the data. So what's the reason for this? So if we look at this question carefully, it's basically, I want to get rid of an archive, but there's 20% of the data that I can't get rid of. Now, do you think it's because it's encrypted? No, because I've got to retain it. If it is encrypted, we could delete it. Do you think of its classification? And I don't think it's its classification, because its classification will be where you store it. Do you think it's because of least privilege? Well, the contractor doesn't have any rights to the data. So least privilege, which is I'm going to give you the minimum amount of rights for your job. But the answer is data retention. Now, what is data retention? Data retention, I think it is a sell-by date. In America, medical data must be kept for a minimum of 6 years, but if you die, it's only 3 years. In the UK, your medical data has to be held for 10 years. So what is data retention? You've got regulations you need to follow, and there's certain data you can't delete for a period of time. And that's why we can't sanitize 20% yet, because 20% yet hasn't gone, let's say it's the US, 20% yet is less than 6 years old. How does that seem? Let's try another one. A junior technician was tasked with patching a file server. They download the patch onto the server, but it fails to install. So what is patching a file server? What we're going to do, we're going to give it an update. But also this guy is a junior technician. So he's not a fully blown administrator. They download the patch onto the server, but it fails to install. What is the most likely reason? Now, sometimes in the exam, where you see most likely or you see best, there's more than one reason for it. Now, is it role-based access control? Role-based access control gives you access based on your job function. So if it was role-based access control and the manager had sent the junior technician to do it, he would actually have the right permissions. And rule-based access control gives you a rule. So no, it won't be rule. Now, privilege access management, this is a thing called PAM, where we've got 4 types of admin accounts: administrator, privileged user, we've got service accounts, and we've got the root account for Linux. And instead of the administrator being put in to the local administrator group, let's say I've got a SQL developer, and the SQL developer's got a user account. Years ago, you used to put the user account in the local admin. But what happens now, you go to Identity Manager, put your identity in, you go to a Bastion Forest, and it gives you an access token. Well, if he had the access token, he would be able to install the patch. So what does that leave me? If I know it's not those, it leaves me least privilege. So what does that mean? That means the junior technician did not have enough rights to install it. How does that sound? Let's try another 3. We go to another one. A technician has been tasked with applying a firmware upgrade. Which of the following has been affected? Now, an application. Applications tend to be patched, but this is firmware. A dump file is when you're using data in use. For instance, I'm running some PowerPoint slides, and what happens is my system crashes and gives me a blue screen of death. A Windows 10 machine doesn't have a firmware upgrade, but devices do. My Bluetooth headset has got a firmware upgrade, but a BIOS is a device, and the BIOS on your motherboard would need a firmware update. It could also be the firmware update, could be a switch, it could be a network device, it could be a firewall, but it's an update for those. A user attended a presentation based on how to identify and report a phishing attack. Which of the following categories does this presentation belong? Is it communication skills? No, that would be answering the phone, sending encrypted emails. It would be talking to somebody. Was it compliance training? Now, identifying a phishing attack is not compliance. Compliance tool is adhering to rules and regulations. Is it annual risk training? It doesn't tell you an asset or a risk, but is it security awareness training? Yes, it is. Now, when you're taking the CompTIA 701 exam, you get quite a few questions on security awareness training. And the magic word you want is report or reporting. Because why do they give you security awareness training? They tell you how to find a type of attack. And they don't tell you how to find a type of attack just so that you can actually find it. But what they're teaching you in security awareness training is to identify an attack and report it. So here is my work in here. And I go next, and this will be my last question. A network technician is going to upgrade the mail server to a newer version of software. Which of the following steps should be completed first? Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to perform an upgrade? You would hope at this time that you're not looking for anything to do with the software. But how important is a mail server? A mail server is actually critical. So we're not looking to see if it's patched. We're not removing them from the network. We're not performing a firmware upgrade. But what we're doing, we're submitting a change control request. Change management in the Security Plus 701. This is where you've got a firewall, you want to change something, or a router, or a critical network device. How does that sound? Now, we've only got enough time for a few things, so I'm going to end my quiz. I'm going to fail it, obviously, but this is to show you the interface when you take it. So when you end the quiz, it says, Do you want to end the quiz or continue? I'm going to end the quiz. And it says to me there, I've answered 5 correctly. And when you think about it, how many have I done? I've done 5. But share your progress. Who do you want to share your progress with? Put somebody's email, download it, and send it. So you can actually see here, there's your thing. Now, what you can do, you can review your answers. I'm going to review the correct answers, and it tells you what they're doing. And it also gives you the solution. The correct answer is D. It dictates how long a type of data should be kept. Then it tells you why A, B, and C are wrong. So if you think of it, it's quite good. And then it gets the ones you did incorrectly. None of the answers you did were incorrect. But then you get the ones that are not attempted. And what we do, we go through the whole lot of them. It gives you the answer and it gives you a solution. So how does that work out? Jeffrey, does that actually help you in your preparation for your test?
Tremendously. Because now I'll have a new strategy to when I'm taking the mock exam.
Thank you guys for attending my study group live today. This is Saturday, 23rd of November. My book, which has got over 300 reviews on Amazon, is at a discount from Amazon. It was until 7 November, but they have extended it. We just don't know. It could be tomorrow, it could be the day after. But the book covers 100% of the exam objectives. Each mini chapter is a separate objective. Chapter 1, Objective 1, Chapter 2, Objective 2, right up to Chapter 28, Objective 5.6. The book also comes with 500 multiple choice question practice tests, including 375 mock exams. It gives you a look and feel of the actual test. You can measure yourself if you're ready. The book also is used in the Ian Neil live study group, which we will start back after January because of the holidays and Thanksgiving. You also got a 12% exam voucher discount.